The grand chambers of the Galactic Senate were vast, shimmering with lights that danced across the ornate walls. Dozens of alien species filled the room, their appearances as varied as the stars. Some had shimmering scales, others had fur or glowing eyes. Each one belonged to the most powerful coalition in the galaxy, the Galactic Empire. Their fleet had conquered thousands of worlds, and their reputation was unmatched. Today, the Senate convened to discuss a strange matter. A new species had been discovered in a far-off corner of the galaxy. These beings called themselves humans. Their planet, Earth, was resource-rich, located in a prime system, and completely unprotected. At least, that's what the Empire believed. Supreme Commander Xarath, a towering figure with 4 gleaming eyes and golden armor, addressed the assembly. His voice echoed through the chamber. Humans are primitive. Their technology is barely advanced enough to leave their own system. They lack unity, discipline, and the strength to resist us. I propose we take their world as our own. They will either surrender or be removed. The senators murmured in agreement. In their long history of conquest, they had never faced defeat. Humanity, to them, was nothing more than another weak race to dominate. But as they finalized their plans, the chamber doors opened and silence fell. A lone human walked in, her footsteps echoing in the grand hall. She was dressed in a simple black uniform, bearing the crest of Earth. Her name was Sarah Vance, a diplomat sent to speak on behalf of humanity. The senators watched her with curiosity and contempt. A few even laughed quietly, amused by the humans' boldness to step into their halls alone. Sarah stopped at the center of the room and looked up at Xarath, her expression calm but determined. "I bring a message from Earth," she said, her voice steady. "Do not make war with us. You will regret it." Her words hung in the air for a moment, and then laughter erupted across the chamber. Xarath leaned forward, his golden armor glinting in the light. "Regret it," he sneered. "Your kind is weak, outnumbered, and technologically inferior. What could you possibly do to us?" Sarah held her ground, unflinching. "You think strength comes only from numbers and machines, but you don't know what humans are capable of. We don't back down. We don't surrender. If you come for us, you'll learn that the hard way." The laughter in the room grew louder, but Xarath raised a hand, silencing it. He leaned closer, studying Sarah like a predator sizing up its prey. "And if we don't heed your warning?" Sarah's expression hardened. "Then you'll force us to show you why we survive, even against impossible odds. This is your only warning. Leave Earth alone." With that, she turned and walked out of the chamber, her footsteps echoing again in the now quiet room. Once she was gone, Xarath straightened, his 4 eyes gleaming with amusement. "The humans have spirit. I'll give them that," he said, addressing the senators. "But spirit alone won't save them. Prepare the fleet. Earth will fall before us like all the others." Across the galaxy, Sarah returned to Earth. The atmosphere in the human command center was tense. Leaders from different nations had gathered, their faces reflecting both fear and determination. They laughed, Sarah reported bluntly. "They don't see us as a threat. They're coming." General Ethan Carter, a grizzled veteran with a scar running down his cheek, slammed his hand on the table. "Good," he said. "Let them come. They won't know what hit them." The room buzzed with activity as preparations began. Earth's defenses were nowhere near as advanced as the Empire's. But humanity had one thing the aliens didn't: creativity. Engineers worked around the clock, designing traps and weapons the Empire wouldn't expect. Scientists pushed the boundaries of human technology, creating prototypes that hadn't even been tested. But more than that, humanity had something that couldn't be measured: an unbreakable will to survive. From civilians volunteering for military service to scientists working without sleep, everyone on Earth knew what was at stake. As the first wave of the Empire's fleet entered the solar system, Sarah stood on the command deck of the human flagship. She watched the alien warships on the screen, their massive size and sleek designs meant to intimidate. "They think they're invincible," she said quietly. General Carter stood beside her, his expression grim but resolute. "Let's show them they're wrong." The vast blackness of space was pierced by the sight of the Galactic Empire's massive warships. They hung like ominous shadows in the void, their sleek designs and towering weapons designed to intimidate any who stood in their path. The fleet, led by Commander Zethros, had arrived in Earth's solar system. From the command deck of the human flagship, Resolute, Admiral Ethan Carter watched the monitors. The Empire's ships were far larger than anything humanity had ever built, their weapons capable of wiping out entire cities with a single strike. "All systems are online," said Lieutenant Rachel Munoz, her voice calm but tight with tension. Admiral Carter nodded. "Prepare the fleet. We're not backing down." Sarah Vance, standing beside him, looked at the enemy ships with a sense of foreboding. They had warned the Galactic Empire. They had sent a message to the Senate, hoping for a peaceful resolution. But now, the time for warnings was over. Earth was about to face the first battle of its history, a battle against a power much stronger than anything they had faced before. "They think we're weak," she said softly, almost to herself. Carter turned to her. "We'll show them we're not." On Earth, the world's leaders had scrambled to prepare. Cities were evacuated, and the remaining civilians were rushed into underground shelters. The human military, though outnumbered and outgunned, fought back with a determination the Empire had not anticipated. Humanity's greatest strength was not in the size of its weapons, but in its creativity and will to survive. Zethros sat in his command chair, his four glowing eyes scanning the data. He could feel the pride of the Empire's vastness, its unmatched power. No species had ever resisted them before. And yet, these humans, who had no advanced weapons, dared to fight back. "Deploy the ground forces," he ordered. "Crush them." The Empire's first wave landed on Earth's surface with the thunderous roar of heavy drop pods. Soldiers in advanced combat suits emerged, their weapons glowing with energy as they marched across the landscape. The humans had no choice but to meet them head-on, knowing that retreat was not an option. But what Zethros didn't expect was the human response. The first wave was met with guerrilla tactics, small, quick teams of soldiers ambushing the invaders from hidden positions. The Empire's soldiers, used to facing weaker enemies, were caught off guard by the human ingenuity. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "we've sustained casualties. The humans are more resourceful than we expected." Zethros clenched his fists, furious. "We'll crush them. Send in the heavy artillery." Back on Earth, the human soldiers fought valiantly. General Carter and his officers oversaw every move, ensuring that Earth's limited resources were used wisely. They knew they couldn't fight like the Empire. Their strength lay in adaptability. In one small city on Earth, a group of human engineers had developed an electromagnetic pulse weapon. It wasn't much, but it was enough to disable the Empire's drop pods temporarily. The alien soldiers found themselves stranded in unfamiliar terrain, forced to fight in a world they didn't understand. Sarah Vance was in constant contact with the human command. "They're not backing down," she said, "but they're struggling. They're not used to unpredictability." Admiral Carter nodded, his face hard with resolve. "Good. We have to keep them off balance." Back in space, the Empire's warships loomed over Earth, but something was happening that no one had expected. Humanity, using everything from civilian resources to military strategies, was beginning to turn the tide. Their weapons, though small and primitive compared to the Empire's arsenal, were proving effective in unexpected ways. The first wave of Empire soldiers retreated, regrouping at a hidden base. Zethros, watching the retreat from his flagship, slammed his fist on the console. "These humans, they're not supposed to fight like this," he muttered. "Their tactics, it's almost like they know what we'll do before we do it." The Empire's supreme commander, Xerath, who had been watching the battle unfold from his seat, leaned forward. "They're not just fighting with weapons. They're fighting with their minds. The realization hit Tareth like a blast. The humans were unpredictable. They didn't follow the rules of war that the Empire had set, and that made them dangerous. They've only just begun to show their strength, Tareth said, his voice filled with an ominous tone. We need to crush them quickly before they grow too bold. Back on Earth, the humans were preparing for the Empire's next strike. The first battle had been won, but it was only a small victory. The real war had just begun. Admiral Carter looked out at the stars, his face grim but hopeful. We've won the first round. Now, we finish this. The humans were not ready to surrender, and the Galactic Empire was about to learn, the hard way, that underestimating humanity would be their biggest mistake. The war was escalating fast. Earth's defenses, though hastily prepared, were holding their own, just barely. The Galactic Empire had underestimated the humans, assuming their advanced weapons and overwhelming numbers would quickly crush the planet's defenses. But the humans weren't giving up. They fought back with everything they had, even the civilians. Admiral Ethan Carter stood on the deck of the Resolute, watching the reports come in. The first battle had been a success, but the Empire wasn't going to back down. They were sending in more reinforcements, and this time, they were prepared to wipe out any resistance. We're running out of time, Carter said, his voice grim. We need to hit them where it hurts. Sarah Vance, standing next to him, looked out the large window at the distant stars. They think they can just destroy us, but they haven't seen the full strength of humanity. We'll show them that we don't surrender. The fleet of the Galactic Empire, led by the massive flagship Oblivion, was now advancing toward Earth. Zethros, the Empire's ruthless commander, was furious. His first wave of soldiers had been caught off guard by the humans' clever tactics, but he wasn't about to make the same mistake again. This time, he was sending in the Empire's elite forces, specialized units trained to deal with the unexpected. Deploy the shock troops, Zethros ordered, his voice cold with anger. We'll break them. Across the planet, the humans prepared for what was coming next. Earth's military had been reinforced by volunteers, all of them determined to protect their home. They knew this would be the fight of their lives, but they were ready. They had to be. In a command center located deep underground, General Carter and Sarah Vance were analyzing the data. The Empire's fleet was massive, and they had overwhelming firepower. But the humans still had a chance. We have one advantage, General Carter said, tapping a few commands into the terminal. The Empire doesn't know our terrain. They don't know our cities, our forests, or our underground bunkers. Sarah nodded, a spark of determination in her eyes. They don't know us at all. Meanwhile, in orbit above Earth, the Empire's shock troops were preparing for their descent. These were not ordinary soldiers. They wore advanced armor that could withstand most conventional weapons, and their weapons were designed to cause maximum destruction. Zethros watched through his monitor as the troops descended toward Earth's surface. They won't escape this time, Zethros muttered, his eyes narrowing. The first dropships touched down in a rural area of Earth, far from the cities, but close enough to begin their march toward civilization. The Empire soldiers disembarked, their weapons raised, ready to make quick work of the humans. But again, the humans were ready. A small group of human soldiers, led by Captain Lucas Williams, hid in the dense forests nearby. They had been preparing for this day for weeks. The Empire's troops were not expecting a counterattack. Captain Williams gestured for his team to move forward. They crept through the underbrush, using the natural terrain to stay hidden. When they were close enough, Captain Williams gave the order. Now, the humans sprang into action. Using guerrilla tactics, they struck the Empire's shock troops with surprise, hitting weak points in their armor. They planted explosive devices in the path of the Empire's advance, causing confusion and chaos. The elite soldiers, unaccustomed to human unpredictability, faltered. Zethros watched in disbelief as his elite troops began to retreat, overwhelmed by the sudden human counterattack. His jaw clenched in frustration. "This is impossible," Zethros growled. "How are they doing this?" Sarah Vance, back on the Resolute, was watching the battle unfold on the screen. "It's the humans' adaptability," she said, her voice filled with quiet pride. "We don't fight like them. We fight smarter." Admiral Carter looked out at the fleet, his expression determined. "We're not just fighting to survive. We're fighting to win." The battle on the ground raged on, but the tide was beginning to turn. The humans were pushing back. The Empire's elite shock troops were scattered and disorganized, not used to being on the defensive. Meanwhile, human soldiers continued to use their knowledge of the terrain to outmaneuver their attackers. In space, the Empire's flagship Oblivion loomed over Earth, but something unexpected happened. The human fleet, though small and not nearly as advanced, began to strike back. The Resolute led the charge, targeting the Empire's support ships and causing major damage to their command structure. Zethros was growing more furious by the minute. His first plan had failed. The humans weren't like any race he had ever encountered. They didn't fight with overwhelming force, but with cunning and persistence. The realization began to set in. This would not be an easy victory. "They are not like us," Zethros muttered to himself. "They're unpredictable." As the humans continued to press their advantage, Admiral Carter sent one final message to the Empire fleet. "We warned you to leave Earth alone," he said. "Now you will face the consequences." The battle for Earth was far from over, but humanity had shown the Galactic Empire something they hadn't expected, that when pushed to the edge, humans would fight back, not just for survival, but to protect what was theirs. The war was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a battle for Earth's future. The Galactic Empire had come, expecting an easy conquest. But humanity had shown them that they were far more resilient than the Empire had thought. Now, the tide was shifting. The humans had taken the fight to the Empire's soldiers, and for the first time, the invaders were beginning to falter. Admiral Ethan Carter stood in the command center of the Resolute, his eyes fixed on the screens displaying the current state of the battle. Earth's defenses had managed to push back several waves of Empire soldiers, but the war was far from over. The Empire's forces were regrouping and planning their next move. "We've made progress, but we can't rest yet," Carter said, turning to Sarah Vance, who was studying the data from the front lines. "What's their next move?" "They're pulling back," Sarah replied, tapping a few keys on her console. "It looks like they're rethinking their strategy. Zethros is calling for reinforcements." Carter nodded. "They think we're weakening, but they don't know us. We're just getting started." Back on Earth's surface, the situation was tense. The humans were spread out across the globe, fighting the Empire on every front. Guerrilla tactics had proven successful, but the Empire's soldiers were now adapting. They were becoming more cautious, more strategic. The humans knew it was only a matter of time before the Empire unleashed its full might. In a hidden command base deep within the mountains, General Carter gathered his senior officers for a meeting. "We need a new strategy," he said, his voice serious. "We've been relying on surprise and guerrilla tactics, but the Empire is adjusting. We can't keep them off balance forever. It's time to strike at their heart." The officers exchanged glances. It was a risky move. Attacking the Empire's command ship, the Oblivion, would mean going head-to-head with their most powerful forces. But Carter knew they had no choice. "We have to hit them where it hurts," Carter continued. "If we can take out the Oblivion, we might just be able to break their will to fight." Sarah spoke up. "It's a bold plan, but it's our best shot. If we can cripple their command structure, the rest of the Empire's fleet will fall apart." Carter nodded. "Exactly. We've got one advantage they don't have: our unpredictability. They don't know how we think." As the plan took shape, the human forces began to mobilize. The Resolute and the remaining fleet were preparing for a high-risk mission. They would need to slip past the Empire's defenses and strike at the heart of the enemy fleet. Zethros, still aboard the Oblivion, was monitoring the situation with growing concern. The humans were proving to be more difficult to eliminate than he had anticipated, but he was not one to back down. The Empire's resources were vast, and he would make sure Earth paid the price for its defiance. "We underestimated them," Zethros muttered, looking at the damage to his fleet. "But that won't happen again. Prepare the Oblivion for a counterattack. We'll wipe them out once and for all." The Empire's next wave of reinforcements arrived, massive ships carrying thousands of soldiers. They descended to Earth, landing in key locations across the planet. Zethros had sent his best troops to deal with the humans on the ground. But the real fight was about to happen in space. He knew the humans would try to strike at the heart of the Empire's fleet, and he was ready for them. Meanwhile, the human fleet began to make its way toward the Oblivion. It was a dangerous mission, one that would require every ounce of courage and skill the humans had. The Empire's warships were formidable, and the Oblivion itself was a fortress. But the humans had something that the Empire didn't: unity. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his face determined. "This is it," he said. "We have one shot at this. If we fail, Earth could fall. But if we succeed, we change everything." Sarah Vance looked out at the stars, her heart pounding. "We're ready. Let's show them what humanity can do." The human fleet moved forward, their ships cutting through the dark expanse of space. The Oblivion loomed ahead, its massive form casting a shadow over everything. But Carter was not afraid. The humans had come this far. They weren't about to stop now. As they approached the enemy flagship, Zethros watched them through his command window. The humans were brave, but they were walking straight into a trap. The Oblivion was surrounded by a ring of deadly warships, and Zethros was confident that they could easily crush the human fleet. "Engage the defenses," Zethros ordered. "Let's finish this." But as the human fleet moved in, something unexpected happened. A small fleet of human ships, much smaller than the Empire's, appeared from the shadows. They had used the moon as cover, hiding in its craters and behind asteroids. The Empire hadn't seen them coming. "We've got them," Carter said, his voice steady. "It's now or never." The battle was about to intensify, and humanity's fate would be decided in the next few moments. The battle in space was more intense than anyone had expected. The human fleet, though smaller, was using its agility and speed to outmaneuver the Empire's massive warships. It was like David facing Goliath, but the humans were determined to show the Empire that they were not an easy target. Admiral Carter stood at the helm of the Resolute, his mind focused on the task ahead. The Empire's flagship, the Oblivion, was directly ahead. Its enormous size and heavy weaponry made it seem almost invincible, but Carter knew that the key to victory lay in taking down the Oblivion. If they could destroy its command center, the rest of the Empire's forces would fall apart. "Admiral, the Empire is deploying its defense fleet," Sarah Vance reported, her voice calm but serious. "They're surrounding the Oblivion. We won't be able to break through easily." Carter didn't flinch. "We don't need to break through. We just need to distract them long enough to hit their weak spots. Keep them busy. We're going for the heart of their fleet." Sarah nodded and quickly relayed the orders to the rest of the human fleet. The plan was risky, but it was their best chance. The humans would split into smaller groups and attack from different angles, confusing the Empire's defenses and causing chaos. It wouldn't be easy, but it was their only hope. Meanwhile, aboard the Oblivion, Zethros watched the humans' movements with growing frustration. They were unpredictable, and their tactics were unlike anything he had encountered. But he wasn't about to let a small fleet of humans take down his flagship. He had spent years building the Empire's power, and he would not allow it to be undone by a group of rebels. "Prepare for battle," Zethros ordered. "They want to fight. We'll give them a fight they'll never forget." The Empire's warships moved into formation around the Oblivion, and soon The sky was filled with the sound of blaster fire and explosions. The humans had launched their attack, but the Empire's defenses were formidable. For every ship the humans took down, the Empire's fleet seemed to replace it with two more. But the humans didn't back down. They fought with everything they had, using their speed and knowledge of the battlefield to their advantage. Each human ship had a unique role. Some provided cover for others, while some targeted key Empire ships with precision strikes. Captain Lucas Williams, leading one of the smaller fleets, was at the front lines. His ship, the Phoenix, dodged the Empire's fire as it swooped in to attack a vulnerable spot in one of the Empire's smaller cruisers. His team moved like a well-oiled machine, each person knowing their role and executing it flawlessly. "Captain, we've got a clear shot at their command center," one of his officers said. "Do you want to take it?" Williams gripped the controls tightly, his heart racing. This was it. If they could hit the Oblivion's command center, it would be a game changer. "Take the shot," he ordered, his voice steady despite the pressure. "We can't waste this opportunity." The Phoenix fired its weapons, and a direct hit tore into the side of the Oblivion. The explosion rocked the flagship, sending ripples through the Empire's formation. Zethros snarled as the blast damaged the Oblivion systems. He quickly gave orders to retaliate, but the humans were already on the move. "We've made a dent, but it's not enough," Sarah said, her eyes glued to the screens. "We need to hit them harder." Carter nodded. "Everyone, focus on that command center. If we can cripple their leadership, we'll break their chain of command." The human fleet regrouped, launching another wave of attacks. Each ship worked together, distracting the Empire's defenses and hitting key targets. The Empire was beginning to lose its grip. Their formations were becoming disorganized, and their ships were slowing down. Zethros knew he was losing control. His fleet was breaking apart, and his ships were struggling to defend the Oblivion. The humans had turned the tables, and now they were closing in on the heart of the Empire's power. "We can't let this happen," Zethros muttered, his hands gripping the controls in frustration. "Prepare for a counteroffensive. We'll destroy them once and for all." But even as Zethros prepared for his next move, the humans were already planning their next strike. Admiral Carter and Sarah Vance exchanged a brief glance, knowing that the time was now. They had taken the fight to the Empire, and they weren't going to stop until Earth was safe. The Resolute and its allies launched one final assault on the Oblivion, focusing all their firepower on the weakened command center. With a thunderous explosion, the flagship's control systems failed. The Oblivion was crippled, and the Empire's fleet began to scatter. "We've done it," Carter said, his voice filled with relief. "The Empire's leadership is gone." But the battle was far from over. The Empire still had vast resources at its disposal, and they would fight to the last. But for the first time in the war, the humans had the upper hand. They had struck the Empire where it hurt, and now the invaders were beginning to understand the strength of humanity. "We warned them to run," Sarah said, a determined smile on her face. "And now they'll see why." The battle had reached a turning point. With the Oblivion crippled, the Empire's forces were scrambling to reorganize. Their once proud fleet was now in disarray, and the humans, who had once been underestimated, were proving their strength. The momentum had shifted, and the Empire could no longer ignore the power of Earth's defenders. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the chaos unfold across the battlefield. The humans had dealt a serious blow to the Empire, but the war wasn't over yet. There were still thousands of enemy ships out there, and Zethros was not one to give up easily. Carter knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of humanity. "Sarah, what's the status on the enemy fleet?" Carter asked, his voice steady, though the weight of the situation was clear in his eyes. Sarah Vance quickly analyzed the data on her screen. "The Empire is regrouping. They're pulling back their damaged ships and preparing for a last-ditch counteroffensive, but they've lost their leadership, and morale is dropping fast." Carter nodded. "Good. Let's keep the pressure on them. If we hit them hard now, We can end this. But Zethros, aboard the Oblivion, was not ready to surrender. He paced back and forth in his command center, his mind racing. The humans had gotten closer to victory, but he wasn't about to let them take it. The Empire's reputation had to be restored, and Earth had to be crushed. We can still win this, Zethros muttered to himself. We just need to strike back with everything we have. He gave a series of rapid orders, and the Empire's remaining forces began to form up once more. They would make one final push, a counterattack that would either destroy the humans or push them into retreat. Prepare the fleet, Zethros ordered. This is our last chance. Back on Earth, the humans were already preparing for the next phase of the battle. Their smaller ships had proven more than a match for the Empire's larger warships, but they still needed to be careful. The Empire had resources, and they would use everything they had to try and turn the tide. Admiral Carter gathered his officers around the table in the war room. We've come this far, he said, but we can't let up now. Zethros will throw everything he has at us in one final assault. We need to be ready for it. We're ready, Sarah said, determination in her voice. We've already shown the Empire that they can't just walk in and take over. Now it's time to finish what we started. Carter turned to Captain Williams, who had been leading one of the smaller human fleets. You've done well, Lucas, but this next move is going to be crucial. We need to take down the remaining Empire forces quickly. Williams gave a sharp nod. Understood, Admiral. We're ready for whatever comes next. With the plan set, the human forces began to move into position. They were not fighting for just their own survival anymore. They were fighting for the future of Earth. It was a fight for freedom, and they would not back down. The Empire's counteroffensive began. The remaining ships surged forward, their guns blazing. The humans, though outnumbered, fought with everything they had. The Resolute led the charge, its powerful weapons firing in rapid succession as the battle raged on. Captain Williams and his fleet engaged the Empire's ships head-on, using their speed and agility to avoid enemy fire while launching precise attacks. The Empire's ships, larger and slower, struggled to keep up. Target the enemy's weak spots, Williams ordered. We've got to hit them where it counts. His fleet launched a barrage of missiles at the Empire's rear flank, causing a series of explosions that sent shockwaves through the enemy formation. The Empire's forces were disorganized, and their defenses were beginning to fail. On the Resolute, Admiral Carter watched as the battle unfolded. His crew worked with precision, firing the ship's cannons and coordinating with the smaller fleets. The Empire was beginning to fall apart, but Carter knew they couldn't afford to be overconfident. Zethros would not give up easily. "We've got to push them harder," Carter said. "Let's finish this." The human fleet closed in on the remaining Empire ships, taking down one after another. But the Empire wasn't finished yet. Zethros had one final card to play, a fleet of hidden warships that had been lying in wait, ready to ambush the humans. The hidden fleet emerged from behind a nearby asteroid field, launching a surprise attack on the human forces. The humans were caught off guard, but they quickly regrouped. "Captain, we've got more incoming," Sarah said, urgency in her voice. They'd been hiding these ships the whole time. Carter's face hardened. "We expected something like this. Stay focused. We've come too far to back down now." The humans fought back with renewed determination, launching their own counterattack. The hidden Empire fleet was powerful, but the humans had learned from every battle. They knew how to use the terrain, how to outsmart the Empire's ships. In a final, intense clash, the humans pushed through the Empire's defenses, targeting the heart of the enemy fleet. With one last strike, the Resolute fired a powerful blast that sent a massive shockwave through the remaining Empire ships. Zethros watched in disbelief as his fleet began to crumble. The humans had done the impossible. They had won. "We've lost," Zethros whispered, his voice filled with defeat. The Empire had underestimated humanity, and now the cost was too great. Earth had defended itself, and the humans had proven that they would never be conquered. The Empire's once mighty fleet lay in ruins. The Resolute, alongside the brave human forces, had fought to the bitter end, and they had emerged victorious. The battle that had seemed impossible only days ago was now over, and Earth stood free, stronger than ever. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the Resolute, gazing out into the stars. His heart was heavy with the weight of the victory, but he knew that this was only the beginning. The Empire's defeat was a turning point, but peace was still a long way off. "Sarah, what's the status on the remaining ships?" Carter asked, his voice steady, but filled with anticipation. Sarah Vance quickly glanced at her console. "Most of the Empire's remaining forces have retreated. A few stragglers are still trying to escape, but we've got them cornered. The war is over." Carter nodded, his mind already moving ahead. "Let's make sure they understand the cost of their aggression. Earth will not be an easy target again." The human fleet, battered but unbroken, moved to finish the last of the enemy's retreating forces. But their victory was not just about destroying the Empire's fleet. It was a message that humanity was no longer weak, no longer helpless in the face of overwhelming odds. Back on Earth, people gathered in cities all over the world. News of the victory spread like wildfire. Humanity had defeated an empire that had once believed it could conquer them. The pride and joy of the victory were felt by every human, from the youngest child to the oldest veteran. For years, Earth had been at peace, living in the shadow of more powerful civilizations. But now, the tables had turned. The human race had proven its resilience, its ingenuity, and its strength. It was no longer a world to be ignored, no longer a planet to be overlooked. Earth was a force to be reckoned with. In the aftermath of the battle, a new alliance began to form. Representatives from Earth met with leaders of other peaceful races who had been oppressed by the Empire. The humans had shown that even the smallest of species could rise up and challenge the mighty. It was a new chapter in galactic history, one where the balance of power had shifted in unexpected ways. But not everyone in the Empire was ready to accept defeat. Far away on the edge of the galaxy, a small group of survivors had gathered. They were the remnants of the Empire's leadership, including some of the most powerful warlords who had once controlled vast territories. They were angry, humiliated, and unwilling to accept their loss. "We cannot let this stand," one of them, a tall, dark-skinned alien with a deep voice, said, slamming his fist onto a table. "The humans have proven themselves dangerous. We must regroup, rebuild, and strike again." Another warlord, an older alien with a silver mane, shook his head. "We underestimated them. The humans have changed the game. They are not the weaklings we thought they were. We would be foolish to underestimate them again." The first warlord sneered. "We have the resources, the power. We will crush them." But the older warlord's gaze hardened. "You can try, but they won't be the same humans you fought before. They've learned, and they've united. The galaxy is not what it was. It will never be again." Back on Earth, Admiral Carter received news that the human race was no longer just a symbol of hope. It had become a beacon of strength. The new alliance between Earth and the peaceful races was growing stronger every day. The humans were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy. "We did it," Sarah said, standing beside Carter on the bridge. "The Empire is gone. We've shown the galaxy what humans are capable of." Carter looked at her and smiled. "Yes, we did. But this victory is just the beginning. The war is over, but the real work is just starting." As the Resolute made its way back to Earth, the crew celebrated their victory. But even as they celebrated, they knew that this was only the first chapter of a much larger story. The Empire may have been defeated, but the galaxy was vast, filled with unknowns. There would be new challenges, new threats to face, and humanity, now more than ever, would be ready for them. The humans had faced an empire that seemed invincible. They had faced overwhelming odds, and they had won. They had sent a message to the galaxy. Humans were not to be underestimated. Earth was no longer a place to ignore. And no matter what challenges the future held, humanity would rise to meet them. As Carter looked out into the stars once more, he knew that the galaxy had changed forever. The war for Earth was over, but the dawn of a new era was just beginning. And this time, the humans would be leading the way.